Hey, everybody, friends. What really gets me sometimes is people claiming Trump is a racist. It's ridiculous. He's not a racist, he's an economic nationalist. Uh, Illegal immigration hurts inner city blacks more than it hurts anybody. And I don't, these people who are who are going to therapy because of Donald Trump, well, there are more black men in prison in this country than at college. Okay? Until Trump became president, there was 45% unemployment in the inner cities. Now we have the lowest black and Latino unemployment in the history of the country. So, did people need therapy then? But before Trump was president, no. So this is a lot of virtue signaling and faking. So this is a letter I wrote to someone who's claiming Trump was a racist, I think, and his name is Bruce, and I don't mean anyone I know named Bruce. But he's going to be the fall guy here. This is in a letter. Bruce, the letter goes, "You keep conflating President Trump with your racial fantasies. If you really cared about this issue, you'd note that 1. Bill Clinton's signing of the crime bill in 1995 put more black men into prisons than did any other single presidential act. He's already done his apology tour for it, Well, I'm sorry I put you in prison. Seriously. And that now there are more black men in prisons in the U.S. than at college. 2, black and Latino unemployment are at historic lows because Trump fulfilled his promise to create jobs by cutting taxes for small businesses, cutting regulations, and imposing tariffs on China and others, and securing the border. 3, you'd also note that Trump's First Step Act, pet project of Jared Kushner and Ivanka, is already rectifying the evil injustice of the crime bill and is freeing some of the black men and women imprisoned by Bill Clinton. 4, the Inner Cities Initiative, I think it's called the Zoning Opportunities, another successful project aimed at building and helping black entrepreneurship. Ivanka and Jared are in on this too. You might ask, Bruce, blacks for Trump. Why do they support him? It could be the jobs. It could be the First Step Act. It could be that Trump is focused on rebuilding the inner cities and not on building more federally funded inner city housing projects where nobody owns anything and nobody cares. It could be that they agree with Thomas Sowell, who said the welfare state has accomplished what even slavery could not, the complete destruction of the black family. Before LBJ's Great Society, single-parent black families in the U.S. numbered in at 15%. What is it now? Nearly 75%. These are, 3/4 of all black families in this country are single-parent. All because of these great federally funded programs that Kamala and Bernie and Cortez and Pocahontas want to give you more of, which provide incentives for single motherhood and chronic unemployment. Why blacks for Trump, Bruce? It could be because of all the awards Trump received over the years for helping civil rights causes. It could be because he's a builder and cares not for PC language, but cares deeply about rebuilding infrastructure, manufacturing jobs, and is not advancing a defeatist policy like reparations, and does not care to hear another lecture on diversity given by a grad student with body piercings and multicolored hair. It could be because we're all sick of the Clintons who raised millions of dollars for Haiti and took 95% of the money, which, bad as that is kind of a metaphor for what race and poverty pimps do regularly. Could be because we all know that because of Trump, the GOP will become the party of black Americans by 2020. That's true. Certainly by 2024. I don't think he'll even need it, but if 20% of the black vote goes to Trump in 2020, which I think is going to happen, it'll be more than decisive, and there'll be more going in 2024. It could be, Bruce, because the cities controlled by Democrats in this country are shitholes, bombed out, look like war zones. It could be, Bruce, because more and more black Americans agree with Trump that the news media is fake, that inner city black folks are not so lacking in intelligence and imagination that they'll burn down and bust up their own neighborhoods for a guy they never met, as a pattern in practice. In other words, they know the press gins everybody up with staged race riots. I've seen the FEMA trucks and the FBI, and staged Jussie Smollett lynchings, which causes more division. Think about it. Remember, inner city black folks, we are told, are so lacking in intelligence and imagination that they'll burn down and bust up their own neighborhoods for a guy they never met, as a pattern in practice, not just one time, not just the Irish marching up 3rd Avenue during the Civil War and bringing about the most destructive riot in U.S. history. We're told this happens with such predictability that the police commissioners in New York and Chicago and L.A. and Houston and Miami, and in Cleveland, Detroit, and Buffalo, what do? They come out and say, it's going to be a hot summer. Now, imagine this. Imagine the police commissioners in New York and L.A. and Chicago and Detroit and Chicago and Houston coming out in April and saying, there's going to be a lot of rapes this summer. Better watch it. There's going to be a lot of armed robberies this summer. It's crazy. It's insane. Read the A section of the New York Times, the great liberal gray lady, paper of record, the New York Times. They are pushing race division every day. And then you realize this was a plot the whole time to separate us, the whole time. And the people you suspect least, the people who are coming as uniters, are dividers. And that's a lot of Hollywood. It could be, Bruce, because more and more black Americans see that poverty pimps and politicians, black and white, who come pledging unity are actually calling for division and getting well paid for it. It could be, Bruce, because black Americans are sick of oleaginous politicians who think blacks can be swayed into voting for them by appearing with Beyonce and Jay-Z or through a cult of victimhood. It could be, Bruce, that more and more black Americans know that Trump told the truth about Charlottesville. There were decent people there who just wanted to preserve Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson statues, and that the press again ginned up division, and that Unite the Right, Jews will not replace us, the right-wing group, there was probably a DNC Soros group as its leader, a guy named Kessler, once worked for Obama. It could be, Bruce, that they know Trump is not anti-immigrant at all. 2 of his 3 wives are immigrants. That he knows more about more Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and does business with more Hispanics than any of the super social justice warriors ever will. It could be, Bruce, because we all know increasingly that the people most harmed by illegal immigration are inner-city blacks and legal immigrants, Hispanics especially, who know Trump never said all Mexicans are rapists. That's lunacy. Stupid. It could be, Bruce, because Trump is serious about ending the opioid crisis. It could be, Bruce, because black Americans, white Americans, Hispanic, LGBTQ, Italian, Irish, Russian, Polish Americans recognize that Trump has destroyed 99% of ISIS, has arranged for North Korea to build a railway with the South, demilitarize their border, send back our war dead, cease nuke testing and intimidating flights over Japan, and a second summit has already occurred. Anyone who tells you that these things are photo ops or don't mean anything is lying and could not be thinking his own thoughts or her thoughts. It's impossible. And we haven't given North Korea a dime. Maybe it's because Trump has created 5 million new jobs, is not bombing any countries except for the chemical plants that John McCain built for ISIS in Syria, and Hillary and John Kerry. They created ISIS on the day Obama was first inaugurated, January 29. You never heard of ISIS. You never heard of Rosebud. And 8 years later, when he left office, they were in 32 countries. Trump has legalized industrial hemp, brought back manufacturing, is staring down the Fed and the Chinese tariffs, and has promised the wall will be built within the year for very little money. Is a wall necessary? Ask the border guards, over 50% of whom are Latino. Yes, this is about the ending of child trafficking, and kids are very well kept. See Candace Owens' video. They are not in cages. Another media lie. While ICE and Border Patrol and DHS figure out if these adults are parents or traffickers. Very important. You have to know whether those kids are being trafficked, if those people are their relatives, or they're, an adult trafficking a child. Perhaps it's because Trump is withdrawing our troops from Syria and Afghanistan and is ordering NATO to pay for our bases. The protection we've provided them with since 1945, and which enriches their economies handsomely. Maybe it's because Trump moved the capital to Jerusalem, has recognized the Golan Heights as Israeli sovereign, has the greatest relationship with Israel ever, has Jewish grandkids, and his right hands are Jared and Stephen Miller, and that his mentors were Roy Cohn and Carl Icahn, and he still looks up to Sheldon Adelson. Perhaps it's right to try, the right for very ill people to try real therapies. This is another Trump program that has been outlawed, right, by Big Pharma. We all know curing cancer is against the law, right? Maybe black and other Americans are more mature than you and aren't freaked out that a billionaire admitted in a private conversation that he has groupies. Consent groupies, by the way. They just let you do it, right? Maybe they agree with me that Grab Her by the Pussy could easily have been the name of a Rolling Stones song or a Prince song, or Stones World Tour. Katie Couric in the best seats pumping fists with Whoopi Goldberg. I'm gonna grab her by the pussy. They'd be all over it. Maybe, Bruce, our black friends know that Bill Clinton is a sexual predator. Bill Cosby is a sexual predator. Roman Polanski, Michael Jackson was a sexual predator. But that Donald Trump is a Frank Sinatra, Mick Jagger-style womanizer. He'll buy you an apartment. He'll furnish it. And that all the charges against him, where are these women now? They should be on The View, as with Brett Kavanaugh, are bogus. He'll buy you an apartment. He tried to kiss me in the elevator. She trotted out those women, Gloria Allred, and they all disappeared. It's ridiculous. There's no pattern in practice. No one has ever said, Trump came on to me, a woman, and he blocked my career. There's no pattern in practice. That's not what he is. He's not in the bathtub saying, hey, come in, jerk me off. Stories we hear about. He's a Frank Sinatra-style womanizer. And if that's a big problem for you, he's also 73 years old, then maybe your problem isn't political. Maybe, Bruce, it's because black Americans recognize that globalism, as represented by the European Union, which is just the crowned heads of Europe, stealing your Bill of Rights, and they want you to come under your unelected leadership. The European Union, the UN, the World Bank, the Vatican, and other factors is a con job, a deception aimed at taking away our Bill of Rights so that we may come under the rule of an unelected leadership. The High Commission of the EU is unelected. Maybe we all see that globalism is a scam using climate change, most of it engineered by globalists, I think, as its unifying call to arms, and that paying a carbon tax to a bunch of royalists who hate our guts will go down with paying indulgences to the church to shorten one's time in purgatory. It's the greatest scam in history. Can you imagine? These people who hate our guts, they care so much about us that they want to impose a carbon tax to save the planet. I can't even stand any more expressions like save the planet. And you want to talk about saving the planet? The election of Donald Trump saved us from certain nuclear World War III. It's a fact. Time to wake up. The media is a lie, and that includes Hollywood and much of the bestseller list and in humanities departments at universities worldwide. Time to wake up. Maybe black and white Americans are tired of the condescending notion that Trump has a loathsome base, a bunch of ignorant people who are dangerous because they like family and manufacturing jobs and don't want their religious beliefs outlawed, essentially. Stop the elitism. They know what oral sex is in Ohio. What kills me is there are people who aren't from the coasts, who are from the Midwest and see the devastation, the no jobs. You drive around upstate New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia, North Carolina and Tennessee, and you can go to the Southwest. There's no jobs. We've lost them because Bill Clinton signed away all of our... they all got rich because their campaign donors want our jobs in other countries for the cheap labor and for other reasons. So Bill Clinton, who's been getting money from the Chinese since the 80s, let China in the World Trade Organization. So they hit us with tariffs, and we can't hit them. And with Canada and Mexico under NAFTA, and with Korea and all these other countries. And they call it free trade. So the American worker is literally rebuilding other countries. We've rebuilt China. And Trump said over and over during the campaign, I don't blame them. I don't blame China and Mexico for these trade deals. Our leaders are so stupid. If I were China and Mexico, I'd take advantage of it too. You see, it's. Let me see what notes I have here. Just some things. I don't want to go on too long, but to understand how really vile globalism is, and how it is not inevitable that we lose all our jobs to China, and who's they? Well, at one time I think it was useful to talk about competing dynasties instead of just one they. And we're talking about really the European Union, which is just a bunch of the crowned heads of Europe, literally the crowned heads of Europe, who are unelected, who want to take away our Bill of Rights, the United Nations, the Vatican, the British royal family, the Bank of London, the Federal Reserve, probably the Rothschild family, Hollywood, Silicon Valley. Did I say the United Nations, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Communist Chinese, the DC culture, Wall Street, and George Soros? They all want to do away with the Jeffersonian nation state. They want to do away with the nation state generally and absolutely want to get rid of the American Republic specifically. In fact, look what they're doing in Europe. Europe has fallen. People can say, oh, everything's peachy keen in Europe, but go look and see. I mean, there are no-go zones there. Women are told you're assuming the risk of rape. You're going to be raped if you go in these areas. Merkel in Germany, I believe they want to legalize child marriage. So the people, the yellow vests in France and the people in Italy and I think is it Hungary are saying, hey, we don't want this. We don't want that. We want our, even the Dalai Lama said, Germany can't become a Muslim country. Germany is for Germans. Okay? And this is a plan to make China ascendant, destroy Europe with radical Islamic terrorism, what they call refugees. Do you see any women and children among those refugees? They're all military-age men from Islamist countries, not Islamic, Malaysia and Indonesia, Islamist countries. Now, did Trump overspeak when he said a Muslim ban? Maybe, but I'd rather have a guy who overspeaks and gets things done than someone whose language is absolutely PC perfect and never gets anything done. Did he overspeak when he talked about the Mexican judge will rule against him? Yeah, probably. I think he overspoke. But notice that judge is a member of La Raza, right? The Latin KKK. People, I would never support a racist, ever. Every day you heard it. But see, you guys, most of the people I know who are astounded or astonished that I would support Trump, you watched your 10 seconds of Trump. Think about it, leaving print media aside, right? Think about it. Be honest. See if I'm not right. You get 10 seconds of Trump, maybe, in a newscast, leaving print aside, and then 15 minutes of Rachel Maddow telling you what to think. And then when she's done, you have a roundtable discussion of eggheads with big black glasses, and they spend 15 minutes telling you what to think. Now, during the campaign, in 2016, I wrote a 55,000-word novel. I got on the elliptical every day, which I'm not doing now, played guitar, and held down a full-time job, and went out and did stuff. But I will admit to you, I watched every Trump speech, and it was nothing like the media was saying. There's race baiting, absolute lie. There's Nazi salutes. There are no ideas. That was the other big lie. She had all the ideas. You can't name one plank from her platform. Seriously, what did Hillary Clinton campaign on in 2016? I'm good for women, which she's not. I want to make the world a better place. I'm going to, I'm not Donald Trump. You can't name one thing. She ran the Thomas E. Dewey 1948 campaign. Don't say anything because I'll coast to an easy victory. And she lost. I want to say something else. This sort of elitist attitude that there's the Trump base. We're all hypnotized. We don't know what we're talking about. And we're dumb, and Trump's dumb. I like that. Trump's dumb. He beat 17 Republicans, the most favored candidate, and he beat the media. Do you get that? He doesn't even need what the Bushes need. The Bushes, campaign cash, and the media. And Trump doesn't need either of them. Hillary spent $2 billion of other people's money, right? Most of it on TV ads. See, she wasn't smart enough in 2016 to know that TV ads aren't going to do it. She spent $2 billion of other people's money. And the big story is Trump spent a tenth of what Hillary spent. In fact, during the campaign, they put that as a liability. Oh, he's not raising the money. He spent a tenth of what she spent, most of it, his own money, and he tweeted for free. And he won. And she lost. So, if you want to say he doesn't know what he's talking about, just want to say something a little bit. If you have any questions about John Podesta, his mother adopted 100 kids in the 70s or in the 60s, and in the late 70s he ran a boys' camp in Asia. John Podesta with who? Dennis Hastert, right? The former Speaker of the House, who I think is still languishing in prison for molesting boys. So you want to go be exposed to something that'll keep you up at night, go see what the Podesta think. It's all true, and they're going to pay for it. Just in case you want to know. Look, you can't be for peace and be global. Okay, globalism is a scam. Even if climate change science isn't a hoax, and I'll bet it is, climate change politics is a hoax. These people are going to impose a carbon tax on us. That's like selling indulgences. That's ridiculous. I wanted to say something about Saudi Arabia. Trump and Jared and Melania went over to Saudi Arabia in early 2017, and they did that dance with the saber dance, and they stood around the globe. And I remember, there's Melania's in the picture, and you realize that meant that Saudi Arabia was now going to be open to women and recognize Israel. And in spring in 2017, Trump and his team became the first people ever, not just the first president and his team, people ever to fly from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia to Tel Aviv in Israel. In other words, we're going to open up. Then that fall, all the guys who plotted 9/11, I say with Dick Cheney, were hanging by their toes in the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh. It's the coup nobody talks about. That's why they floated the Khashoggi story. Now, if this awful thing happened, it's terrible, but you don't wreck the peace because of this one guy, and that was the plan. And the story's died down, you'll notice, because he's CIA connected. Of course, his uncle was the awful arms dealer, Adnan Khashoggi. And they got rid of those old Saudi billionaire gross playboys who cocaine and trafficked children and all that stuff. They got rid of them. Prince Al-Alweed, who paid for Obama's Harvard legal education, Prince Bandar, so close to the Bushes, they call him Bandar Bush, right? Those are the people that we've gotten rid of with the old king and the young prince. So now they want you to believe the young prince is this awful guy. Well, no, it's very hopeful what's happening. See, before Trump won, I knew he was going to win. I knew he was going to go after Big Pharma. I knew he was going to go after the Federal Reserve, and that's what he's going to do. Now, if you're listening, you know that the Federal Reserve simply puts people into debt. It's the key to our slavery, and they're afraid of him. And he's going to reconstitute the Fed by floating gold. He's going to do what Jefferson wanted to do, what Jackson wanted to do, what Lincoln wanted to do, what Kennedy started doing by printing silver certificates. Take away the power from the Fed, a private group of bankers that creates and controls our currency. At interest, we borrow from that. That means we're immediately put into debt. Okay? The original vision on Benjamin Franklin, Jefferson, later Jackson and Lincoln and JFK and James A. Garfield, and maybe William Jennings Bryan, was to create money as wealth. You want to have banks with low interest rates distributed all over the country just to keep the bankers in business. And then when you walk into that bank or that building loan, who greets you? George Bailey, Walter Houston, somebody who cares about the community, not where you have bankers who screw people and destroy communities. And this is what's changing under Trump. But the media's lying because the media is bought and paid for by all these globalists who want to bring down the nation state, make you so poor that you'll embrace globalism. They got rich, the Clintons and Bushes and Obamas, by selling us out with these trade deals and other ways, making other people to make China ascendant, and to destroy our work base. They got rich and you got poor. And Trump said this all during the campaign, and it resonated with people. Okay? Do you really believe the savviest numbers guy in the world while running for president is going to say, well, I don't want to say anything to alienate my KKK base? Do you really think he said that? Go check it. How many times he's disavowed the KKK? Do you really think a guy who is going to say all Mexicans are rapists when he's gone to Mexico and Puerto Rico more times than anyone you know? He has more friends, more associates, more colleagues, more employees in Mexico and Puerto Rico than anyone you know. But the media has to lie because he's the change. Number one, Trump is peace and prosperity. 5 million new jobs created. We're not bombing anyone except except for defeating ISIS, created by McCain and Kerry and Hillary and Obama. Number two, he can't be bought. If you want to talk about his corruption in New York, you know what he was doing in the 1980s and corrupt Donald Trump? He was working with Giuliani and Robert Mueller to bring down the Sicilian mafia. He knows the courts through Roy Cohn. He knows the deal through Giuliani and Mueller. He knows, he's had politicians, Trump, come to him for decades, begging him for money. He knows they're hacks. He knows how to deal with China. He says he's been trading with them for decades. He's known what he was going to do for decades. And when someone snarkily, a reporter, said to Trump before he left for Helsinki to meet with Putin, she said, "Are you prepared for the summit?" He said, Trump said, "I've been preparing for this my whole life." It's one of those things. This is all worked out. So I'm going along. I'll go a little longer. In 2011, what we call the Patriots, and that includes the great Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who fell on his sword, and you'll see why. It's not what you think. General Dunford, Admiral Rogers, Kelly, and Mattis approached Trump and said, you have to run for office, because if you don't, and this was in 2011, and he almost ran in 2012, if you don't, we're going to do the unthinkable. If Hillary is president and continues the 16-year plan to weaken our economy with regulations and get us in a nuclear World War III, probably with Russia, okay, we are going to take her down. That's really what happened. And there's a lot more to this than you think. So the establishment really is threatened. There really is. Did I have any other notes? What other notes do I have here? One last thing. Jim Ruttenberg of the was he managing editor of the New York Times, wrote that editorial in 2016 saying basically the threat presented by Donald Trump is so awful that we're not going to be unbiased. We're going to lie. And I always thought, well, if he's so bad, why do you have to lie? Just tell the truth. And then after the election, they printed an editorial saying we're going to go back to our stalwart, great, high journalistic standards. They said they were going to lie. They said, and people still believe them. And after the Russian collusion thing is all a hoax, you're still believing the media that supports every war. Look, the media promotes war, poverty, disease, and death. They promote big pharma all the time. So, look, I would never support a racist. I heard what they were saying about Trump, and I said, well, I guess I was wrong. He seemed really strong in those debates, and I liked what Bob Dylan said about the billionaires rebuilding the inner cities and the globalists. Maybe it's Trump. Oh, it's not Trump because he's awful. There are Nazi salutes at his rallies. I can't believe I even believe it. And then I started looking into it. And it's a total lie. There's no race baiting. There's no anti-immigrant stuff. Plenty of ideas. I mean, I'm going to cut your taxes. We're going to make NATO pay for our bases. We're going to make education local. We're going to renegotiate these trade deals. We're going to pull out of Syria and all these dumb wars. What did he say in the State of the Union just recently? One of the great speeches in American history. Excuse me. Great nations do not fight endless wars. You know? And that will go down with one of the great speeches. You might not even agree when he says America will never become a socialist country. But you have to understand how that resonated with people. So anyway, I've gone on long enough, and people ask me, what happened? I am not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'll never be a liberal progressive again. They're too corrupt and foul. But I'm a constitutionalist. And before Ron Paul. But Ron Paul said, it's no accident that the century of central banking is the century of world war. When you create and market debt, and to a banker, of course, a debt is an asset. And then all the derivative funny money stuff started really coming home to roost when you had people betting on these brokers betting on other people's failure, like in a crap game. Like you bet that this guy's going to fail, and you could bet on it. So it's all crazy. And who signed the repeal of Glass-Steagall in the 90s? Because that's what corporate donors wanted. Bill Clinton. He signs the crime bill, which puts all black men in prison. He signs NAFTA, which destroys our trade with Canada and Mexico because they can impose huge tariffs on us and we can't. And they call that free trade. And with China, by getting the World Trade Organization. They're horrible. And when you realize, none of us here, I don't think, likes Bush and Cheney. When you realize that the Clintons and Obamas and McCain are just as evil as the Bushes and Cheneys, things come into focus. If I could find one more thing, I'm telling you can't be for peace and be global. We can work together, we'll have fellowships together, we'll have trade, we want that. But the nation state, the Jeffersonian nation state, without a central bank, with no central banking, that's what we're talking about. That's what this revolution is all about. Have a great day.